Let's go, Jeffrey. I think you'll see that's true. We built a product we think you're going to love. We built it for you. So let's start with introductions. I'm Jeffery Snover. I'm the architect of the Monad project. And here we have superstar Jim Truher. Jim is the inventor, along with Bruce Payette, of the Monad language, something I think you're going to enjoy quite a bit at the end of this talk. So today we're going to talk to you about...
Well, first, are you ready to go? Have you killed all the processes on the system?
Yeah, you know, have you ever noticed that? Sometimes you get a demo, somebody's given a demo, and the blue toast comes up, you know, oh, subscribe to blah, 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 renew your subscription. So we should fix that, make sure we're clear. So let's start with this is the demo machine. And so first, I want to make sure I've turned off all that junk, right? So what I do is I say get process. And I'm using Monad to solve that problem. So here it shows all the processes, right? But the question is, what the heck are these things? You know, I once did a demo for Bill Gates, and I asked him, I said, Bill, just did this. I said, Bill, do you have any idea what these processes are doing? And he looked at me, he shook his head, and he says, I ask myself that question every day. Well, with Monad, we try and solve that problem for you. So here, you know, you see the process names, but that's not particularly helpful. So what we're going to do here is, by the way, let me just make a point here. I showed you all the processes. You could have asked for a particular one, process name LSASS, okay, and gotten a specific one. Now, I'll guarantee you, this half of the room has now said, yay, those guys really understand the needs of production scripters, right? Verbosity. Boy, when I look at a script that I wrote a year ago or a script somebody else wrote, I want it to be verbose so I can understand exactly what went on, right? These guys have dealt with Perl, they've got a bunch of Perl scar tissue, and they appreciate what I've just done. This half of the room is saying, oh my God, those idiots, they've screwed up an interactive shell. This is supposed to be an interactive shell. I don't want to type all that crap with an interactive shell. Okay, score, 15, love. They're right, you're wrong. Why are you wrong? Because whereas we are both verbose, we're also pithy. So in this case, Monad only needs to, you only need to type enough of the parameter name to be unique. Oh, you needed that. Okay. Sorry, that wasn't unique. We also support aliases and positional parameters. We also support wildcards. Wildcards for lots of things. So we're both verbose, you guys are happy. We're also pithy, so you guys are happy. Power user and documentation. But still, my point was, what the heck is going on with the system? And when I looked at these, that didn't really tell me enough. So what we can do is we can say, hey, I'd like to format this as a table, give me the name, but then tell me the company this stuff came from and the description. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a lousy typist. And if you're a lousy typist, you've got a friend in the business, okay? This product is going to be a great product, largely due to my personal failings, okay? So description, I don't know how to spell description, right? So wildcard, give me the description. And here, now we're showing you the product names, where they came from, and the description. So from here, I can find the things that are kind of going to cause me troubles during the demo and delete them. But if you take a look, boy, I got a bunch of them, and you look like a crowd that wants to cut to the chase. So I don't really have a whole lot of time to do this. And so in fact, I've done this before. I've had problems with this in the past. So what I've done is I've extended the type system, okay? So Monad type system is meant to be extended by developers, extended by third parties, extended by your users, right? Someone once said that that marketplaces are a conversation. We believe that type systems are conversations, that lots of people ought to contribute to the conversation about what a type is, etc. And so what I've done is I've extended the type system to have additional metadata about these process objects. And in particular, what I did is I added a category. So now we'll say format name and the category. And again, I can't spell, so I'm going to do a wildcard. And I went and categorized each one of the processes on the system and said what category. So you see we got OEM, application, OS, etc. And if I wanted to, I could group them by that. Group by category. And so you see I've got 16 processes coming from the OEM, 4 pestware things, firewall, antivirus, etc. So let's get rid of that pestware stuff. So get process where the category match pest, again, I'm a bad typist, and go ahead and stop those. But, you know, I might get it wrong. And if I get it wrong, this is a pretty important demo, right? You've invested a lot of your time and money to come here. We've invested a lot of time and money here. If I get this wrong, it's going to be bad, okay? That often happens to your customers, right? You deliver them functionality, and if they get it wrong, they're screwed, right? So whenever in trouble, fear, or doubt, you type minus what if. And here it tells you what it would have done, but then doesn't do it. And I say, yeah, that looks approximately correct. So now I say, just to make double sure, I say minus confirm. Do you want to kill this one? Yes, I'd like to kill that one. Do you want to kill this one? No, yeah, I'm not sure. What is that thing again? So I say suspend. Notice I get a different prompt. It now has a 1 in it. That 1 is telling me I'm in a subshell, a nested prompt. So from here, I can say, get process, iPod, star, format table. Oh, let's just format the whole thing. Take a look at this in great detail. Oh, it's that thing, that company. Yeah, I know those guys. I exit, go back to where I was, and I say, you know what, I'd like to kill them all. And boom, I've killed them all. Okay, so with that, I think we're ready for our talk. Sorry to take that slight diversion, but give you a little bit of a taste of the power of Monad. Okay, you heard today about what it takes to participate in the Vista wave of innovation, right? Great wave of new products, new product capabilities coming out. You want to make an impression with your product, you want it to be rock solid, and you want to be connected, get connected. Now, part of being rock solid is making sure that your application is fully manageable. It's designed for reliability and manageability. Monad is a critical portion of the manageability story in administrative scripting and control. In the past, there's been lots of different management scenarios, right? You've had a GUI scenario, click, click, click. You've had a command line scenario. You've had command line scripting. You've had COM scripting. And what we did was we had a technology for each one of these slots, right? Great technologies, MMC, good stuff for a GUI shell. Command.exe in the command space and for command scripting, and then WSH with VB script and JavaScript for COM scripting, right? Great tools. These are great tools, but they're separate tools for each of these scenarios. Now, going forward, each of these tools has continued to be supported, but is essentially feature complete. And a new technology, Monad, is a single technology which spans lots of these scenarios. In the area of the GUI shell, we're going to have MMC snap-ins, which are layered on top of Monad, command line interface. In the command shell, we can pick up some other shells, but now Monad is an interactive shell. It does great command line scripting, and it supports COM-based scripting. So now you've got a single technology that you and your customers can learn to leverage each one of these scenarios. And you'll see how we layer the GUIs on top of the command line, paving the way for eventual systems programming, okay? So we want to have this nice glide path between the GUI, the CLI, and systems programming. All right, so my goal for this talk here is going to be essentially threefold. One is to get Monad in focus for you. What is this thing? What are you trying to solve? How do I think about this? Two is to make it clear what you need to do to be able to integrate Monad into your product and take advantage of it. And then three, to describe what benefits you and your customers are going to get once you've done that work. Okay? So to start off, let's talk about why we're doing Monad. What's up here? And there were really two motivations. First was user experience, right? Admins love command line interfaces. It's as simple as that. GUIs are great. I mean, we all love GUIs. But when I go to a GUI and manage a system, right, tells me what to do. But when I need to do that to 10,000 machines, GUI's not so helpful there, right? Walk into hundreds of machines, click, 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 and it's not what you want to do. You want to be able to write a script. And admins, what they want to do is they have a particular style of interacting with their system, right? What they do is they get out a keyboard and they want to type something and they want to get a response back. They want to look at that, analyze it, do something, tweak it, get it working, then put that in a file, and then run it. Run it, then generalize it. Yeah, works good, works a lot real well. Parameterize it, and then share it with the rest of the world, right? So that other people can go up to the web and say, I need a script for doing X, Y, Z. They see that script, they then evaluate it, and they participate in a community of script sharing. That is the admin development model, right? There's developer development models, and there's admin development models. And this is a tool focused in on the admin development model. So that's the preferred interaction. And frankly, we haven't had good tools to support that development model. We're going to fix that. The next is an architectural issue, architectural motivation. As programmers, I'm sure you've all got to the situation where you've looked at your code and said, you know, I'm on version N, this has progressed over time, and it's really time to step back and refactor, right? I have different pieces of code doing the same job in different ways. I have a support headache. It's not architected correctly. I want to step back and refactor things. And we wanted to do that. We wanted to refactor the command line, the individual utilities, the commands, and the shell itself. We believe that architecturally we could get incredible power out of a refactoring. The next is we wanted to focus that refactoring on an object flow engine. Now, when I say object flow engine, you should think data flow engine, but applied to objects. And we'll discuss that more in detail. But that is the core of our refactoring effort and gave us incredible power. And last was the ability to integrate these islands of scripting. We've had islands of scripting, right? There's text scripting. Oh, you know, invoke a command, get text, parse that text, feed it to the next command. We've had that world. Then we've had the COM world, right? Be able to integrate, access an OLE automation object, get the object, access its methods, access its properties, kind of separate worlds. And then there's this emerging world of .NET, where we really don't have a particularly good scripting story there. What we wanted to do was to provide you and your customers a single tool that integrated these islands of scripting. Because look, here's the deal. You're going to deliver some functions to your customer. Your customer is going to take that and manage it. And when they manage it, in general, they're going to manage your technology along with something else, right? They're going to get processes, they're going to get services, they're going to get some WMI information, whatever. So your technology has to integrate with the other technologies on the platform. But to the degree to which that's text or you have to integrate with them. And in the past, you really had to pick a winner. Oh, I'm going to produce text-based command lines. Therefore, you participate with that community of users. And you didn't play as well with the COM scripting world. Or if you did COM scripting, you effectively shut yourself out of the command line scripting world. So your value proposition was not as good as it should be. We're going to fix that. We've had lots of inspirations for this project. I think it was Newton said that you can see so far because he stands on the shoulders of giants. So too, we're quite proud of what we've done with the Monedge technology, but in all humbleness, we are standing on the shoulders of some great technologies that went before us. And here are some of our inspirations. The Unix shells and utilities, boy, just great stuff. Fantastic compositional model, incredible power, kind of a model of simplicity and elegance. That said, the AS400 and VMS worlds deserve equal credit. These are fantastic platforms because what they've done is they have a single common parser across all their commands, so you get exact syntactic consistency. They're very hardcore about their naming schemes, so their customers learn it once and then are able to predict it. And it's a very production-oriented environment, and we just love that. Tickle and WSH, great environments that both can be embedded in applications. So you as developers can say, hey, that's great scripting technology, but I want to bring it into my application and take advantage of that for my in-process scripting. And WSH in particular, its ability to support multiple languages hey, you get to choose VB script or whatever. You're not tied to a specific language. And then Bash, Perl, C#. These are languages which have, some cases great style, some cases not such great style, utility, and expressiveness. So these have been our inspirations for the Monad project. Okay, so the object flow technology is the core architectural underpinning of the Monad project. And what it allows us to do is to basically eliminate a bunch of the low-class maintenance work that you and your customers had to do in scripting in the past. Okay, so here's how it works. Commandlets, these are commands, but they're smaller, they're commandlets. They're going to emit objects, right? So they don't emit text, right? In the old world, commands are processes which emit text. In this world, commandlets are .NET classes, and they emit objects. Those objects are then accepted by the Monad runtime and are wrapped in a synthetic type system. What is it and why do we have it? A synthetic type system is basically based upon .NET and extends .NET. This is how we're able to say we extend the .NET type system to allow third parties to participate in the type system, where your value-added partners and your customers can add additional information about the type system. In some cases, it's metadata. Hey, .NET, love .NET. Here's one thing .NET didn't do. It didn't allow me to specify what the key of an object is. Our type system allows you to do that. Basically, it says, hey, given this .NET type, this property is the key to that. And then we take advantage of that metadata. It also allows you to add additional data about the types, right? Additional properties, additional aliases or script properties, etc. So you can extend the type system. This is the technique that I use to extend the processes. I added a property category, and I said, if this is the name, here's what category it belongs to. So I extended the type system. Now notice that then the user doesn't have to say, oh, I know that there's some data over here that has this information, or there's this product, right, Tivoli or CA or BMC, they've got some information. I'll do some lookup through their APIs. Geez, how do their APIs work, where there's documentation, etc. No. They brought the information to you. And you're going to see that's the big theme here. We're bringing the information and the system to the user, not the other way around. Okay, so this also provides, the synthetic type system provides a uniform way to access multiple type systems. Okay, so whether it's XML, ADO, WMI, ADSI, others, there's a uniform syntax to get at the objects. Now, once a command emits an object and we wrap in our synthetic type system, we then have the engine manage these things in a pipeline. Basically what happens is object gets emitted from one command and we look at the data requirements of the next object in the data flow. So let me step back a second. You say A pipe to B, pipe to C. Yeah? Looks like a traditional command line. It is not a traditional command line. Traditional command line, each one of those things is effectively separate processes and you pipe text between them. Here, A pipe to B, pipe to C produces a data flow engine, a data flow graph interpreted by the data flow engine, or the object flow engine. A gets invoked. It runs until it emits an object. That object is then handed to the runtime engine, and we look at B, and we take a look at the data requirements of B and the object that we have. And we do whatever coercion, apply a crowbar, shred the data, etc., required to get that to B. Then B runs, emits an object, and we do the same thing to get its data to work for C. Okay? So much, I mean, I'm sure you've done this. How much of your coding experience is dealt with this kind of maintenance thing of saying, dealing with the impedance mismatches between code, right? This guy emitted a WMI object, this guy needs some XML, or vice versa. We handle all that for you, okay? Lastly, we have a set, as much as possible, we try and keep objects as long as we can. And so when I type GPS and you see text, what's really happening there is it's a textual view of a set of live objects. It's incredibly powerful. Okay? And so it's only when we need to that we actually render them as objects. Because once I render them as text, because once I've rendered it as text, I've effectively, you can't manipulate it as well as when you have the raw objects. And last, we have a new set of utilities, right? And my utilities, I mean, think about awk, sed, grep, all those things. Now we have a set of utilities which manipulate objects, okay? And these utilities have some of the features of, think of it as the best, think of it as the love child between Unix and SQL, right? So you got some utilities that kind of look like awk, grep, sept, awk, grep, sed, and you have some utilities that look like more SQL things, where, and things like that. Okay, so best of both worlds. Does that make sense? A little bit, Lat? Flashlights? Anybody got a flashlight? Okay, no flashlights. We've lost them, Jim.
I got to give out more.
Okay, that's not good. Let's see if we can keep this going. Now, as developers, let's explain the value proposition to you. There's one light on.
There you go.
Okay, so what I want to get in focus here is what value you're going to write. We're going to ask you to write some code, and the question you should be asking, if I was sitting in your seat, this is what I would ask: is what value am I going to get for that code? Okay, what value am I actually going to get if I write this code? Specifically, how are my customers going to be better off if I write that line of code? Right? How are they going to be able to manage their systems better? One, two. How can I take advantage of this technology to help my customers by delivering them production quality scripts that they can then tweak for their individual requirements, right? Sometimes we deliver functions to our end users and it's like, this is the way to do it, no variation. Other times we say, hey, here's how you do it, but you're going to apply your business logic here. Or small businesses do it slightly different than medium businesses do it slightly than large businesses. So one of the questions you should be asking is, can I leverage this technology to deliver those customers, to deliver my functions in a way that it can be one, production quality, and then two, can be tweaked with the customer's business logic. And the last thing I want to talk about is how it can help you personally, right? Get you rich and famous. No, how it can help you personally, right? How it can help with your personal productivity in managing your system, in developing your application, et cetera, and supporting your application. So here's the deal, right? Here's the deal slide. You do this, we do that, goodness. What we want you to do is to take a look at your management objects of your application and implement .NET interfaces to them, okay? So this is the talks you've been hearing about, right? Take your, write this class, blah, 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 add these attributes, blah, 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 but have a full .NET programming API to your management classes. This allows any language to be able to write code, management code, to your interface and manage that. Then I'm going to ask you to go and write a thin layer of either commandlets or providers, and these things are focused in on the admin experience. Now here I want to make a crucial point. .NET objects are not a management experience, okay? If you think that you can write a .NET object and hand it to admins, that's not going to do so well for you, okay? Or rather, if you think that and you don't, he's going to get your customers, okay? .NET object is great, but it's great for developers. Admins are not developers. Admins need some things different. And so what we want to do is we want to say these commandlets and providers are focused in on taking a .NET layer and presenting it in an admin experience, okay? And you'll see that. Now I talked about these two things, commandlets and providers. Commandlets, we then take those things and we expose it as a set of command line tools, okay? We do all the parsing. You don't have to do any of the parsing. You'll see that. We take these providers and we take the data out of those providers and we expose them as drives, okay? Navigable drives that people can CD into, dir, ls, cat, all that good stuff. And then Monad provides a bunch of functions around those two things, right? We provide an interactive shell so that people can type, discover your functionality, invoke your functionality, take a look at things. A strong language that they can write scripts against you'll see that this is one of the strongest, most widest dynamic range of any scripting language I think you'll have ever seen. If you've seen one with a wider dynamic range, please let me know. That'd be a great piece of feedback. We provide a single common parser and argument validator for your classes, okay, and a large set of utilities and formatting. So basically in the past, if you go back and take a look at any of your command line codes, right, if you take a look at 2 command lines, what you're going to see is that there's a ton of common functions implemented over and over and over and over again in these things, right? One of the jokes is that some previous operating systems, what you really have is thousands of crappy little parsers, okay? That's no good. We want to have one really good parser, okay? The other thing about that is that the degree to which everybody goes around implementing the same code different ways is the degree to which we're going to deliver an inconsistent experience to our users. What we want to have is an absolutely consistent user experience so that we will take the brunt of educating all the users out there about the pattern. Here's the naming guidelines. Here's what this error message means. I'm going to translate that error message into, a gazillion language, etc. Then you follow behind us, taking those things and kind of draft them behind us, saying, hey, if you've learned all that, here's our set of differences, right? Instead of get process, it's get my object. When you have an incorrect parameter, you're going to leverage our error messages, so you don't have to translate it into lots of different languages, okay? And so you can have a very minimal investment on your part, because we're going to do a bunch of the work. Next is it requires very little training on your customer's part to take advantage of it. So we think it's a great deal. Now, if you're sitting there saying, hey, Microsoft, I don't want that deal. I want to be fully unique. Go for it. You can do that as well. But I don't imagine many people are sitting there saying that. Okay, so there are, again, 2 development choices, commandlets and data providers. With the commandlet, we focus in on the task of administrative tasks, right? High-oriented task things. What is the guy trying to accomplish? Okay, now I need an abstraction for that. When they try and do this, things are going to go wrong. I need to be able to provide them debug information or verbose information or error information in a rich way, okay? So the way you implement this is by subclassing a class called commandlet. You then, the properties of that class, you put attributes on them, and they get surfaced as parameters. You override one or more of a set of overridable methods, begin process, process record, end processing, stop processing. We're very record-oriented, and you leverage some helper functions. And with that, Superstar Jim will lead us into a demo.
So what I'm going to show you here is how little work this really is. I'm going to show you how to write a commandlet in a whole whopping 20 lines of code, 2 of which are actually ones that you'll immediately recognize. So if we take a look at this source code, this is the stop my process commandlet. It will take well, let's go through it, see what happens. Just a couple of things to note, of course. You want to be sure that you are getting the right, having the right the using statements. And here's the first piece of magic. This attribute says that the following class is a commandlet. There's a couple of things about this that you should recognize, is that the first part, stop, is a verb. This is the noun. And then there's this little bit here that says supports should process. And that actually allows you to ensure that if you want to use the what if and confirm, it will just automatically work for you here. So a couple of things that we need to take a look at too here is this line, or lines 10 and 11. This is how you create a parameter in a commandlet. If you're familiar with working with utilities and standalone utilities, writing a parameter, you wind up using getops, and then you do a lot of stuff, and then you see if there's an argument. Okay, there's an argument. What do? I create some storage for that and put it somewhere. And in this world, all you do is you say, okay, the following public member of the class is a parameter. A couple of things that are necessary to look at here. Mandatory equals true. That says, if you don't provide any data for me, the parser will say, give me some data. I need data. And it will insist that you provide some data unless you hit Control-C and say, I don't want to play anymore. So but if you've got some data and you need data for this commandlet to work, it says, I need that data. It says, give it to me. This next line here that says, value from pipeline by property name, that's the really, really important piece of glue that says, I'm going to read, this commandlet's going to be reading objects from a pipeline. If any object comes to that commandlet in the pipeline that has the property name, process name, it will take that value and bind it to the parameter value. So it takes the incoming object, says, hey, do you have a process name property? Says, yes, I do. Takes that process name, takes the value from that incoming object, binds it to this process name parameter, and you get to keep going, running on with your processing of your records.
We also do type coercion, right? And by the way, this is the key point. In the if we just bound to the process object, or I take a process object, well then there's like one command that can pipe to this thing, right? Get process. But by binding the name, you can it dramatically increases the number of things that we can feed to your commandlets, right? So if a WMI object has something called process name, we'll bind it. If you have an ADO data table, which has a field called process name, we'll bind to it. XML, if it has a child called process object, we'll bind to it. So basically, by this method of kind of switching from if you're your management guy, from an is-a programming model to a has-a programming model, it just dramatically increases the integration that we deliver to you for free. Question?
Does that also increase the danger that you get bad data from something because the danger happens?
Question is, doesn't that also increase the danger because you might get something bad? Well, the only reason why it's going to be piped to that is when you say, I pipe this to that. So yes, there's some risks. It's the Spider-Man thing, right? With great power comes great responsibility. So yes, you do have to be aware of that. And that's why there's a number of things throughout the shell, like minus what if, okay, to support that. But
This little method here is one of those things that, this is the record operator, essentially. For each record, for each object that comes to this commandlet, this process record method will be called. And here's the real line of this line and this line are the real lines of code that say, okay, I'm going to get the process by name and then I'm going to kill it. But if you'll notice this thing here, this should process. This is the companion to this line up here. And the companion says, well, you've told me that should process is going to be part of this, and so here it is. But what we provide for you is a consistent message that says, if you say you wanted to kill this process, it's going to say, do you want me to do this on this process name? Now you might think, well, that's only a couple of lines of code. I can just write this line myself. Why should I bother?
don't do it.
Don't do it. The reason is because you're going to write it differently, that line of code differently, or that message differently than somebody over here or over there, and then you're going to want to localize it, internationalize it, and so you're going to have to do all of that. So by putting this in one place and taking control back into the engine, we can provide all that for you ourselves and not inject a lot of inconsistency depending on your individual stylistic way of writing your own particular message.
And remember, Monad is a DLL, right? It can be hosted in lots of different things, right? I mentioned to you the command line X shell that we're showing. It can also be hosted by an MMC snap-in. So if you write code that says console.writeLine, are you sure? Well, what's going to happen when it's run from an MMC snap-in? No, you don't do it. You call this API and we handle those things for you, right? Giving you the appropriate Monad, MMC GUI or console GUI.
That's right. And then at this method down here at the end, this happens after all of the objects have been passed to the commandlet. And I've implemented this because I kind of wanted to show another portion of how this environment works, where another helper function called writeVerbose allows you to create another set of messages for other purposes. So when you have a minus verbose parameter, you will actually have this communicate with you and tell you more a little bit about how the operation of this commandlet works. But what's really important is how does it work, so let's go take a look.
Yeah, come on, I wrote 29 lines of code. What do I get for that?
Well, if we take the listing of the processes here and we say, okay, so show me where the handle count, handles is greater than 500. Okay, so now I've got that. So now what I want to do is I want to say stop my process. Well, this may or may not be a good thing, right? What do you think? Killing CSRSS and LASS, do you think that's a good thing?
I've done that. My recommendation is you don't.
No good. So this is this is telling me what it would have done if I had gone ahead and really done it. Let's start up a notepad so I have something safe to kill. So now I can say PS notepad. I can say stop my process. Let's confirm. Sure I want to do this? Yes. So that 29 lines of code that you've written there, as you saw in the first demonstration, this bit of code is all you need to do to create a commandlet to participate fully in this environment. You don't really have to write a lot of extra code to manage the object impedance mismatch. All you need to do is use these attributes in the commandlet and away you go. There you go.
So I mentioned two things, commandlets, you just saw it, now providers. You're going to like this. If you haven't seen this before, you want to put your seatbelts on. Okay, providers allow you to expose your data. You want to focus in on how to expose your data to customers, okay? And we're going to expose it as a hierarchical namespace that people can then navigate to, okay? So this is very similar but completely different than the Unix model where everything's a file system, and even you can go cd into like dev proc and see the directories. There it's very semantically thin. In this model you see it's very semantically rich. You'll need to see this to understand it. The way you'll do this is you'll implement one or more abstract classes, okay, and you'll have a set of interfaces, optional interface that you implement as well. You then provide a set of attributes on those things, and again, we're going to surface this as a drive. And really, I should point out, foreshadow, that there are labs, detailed labs on how to write a commandlet and how to write a provider, as well as scripting down in the labs, and we've got proctors there all day, so you'll get lots of details there. Back to Jim.
So let's get this really, really in focus about providers. Providers present a view that looks like a file system, and so you navigate the file system in a pretty understandable, recognizable way, right? You type ls, you go to en, you type ls, you do these sorts of things. You say, show me all of the DLLs that you've got here, and you'll see that you can do all of that, navigate that, cd to Windows, and there I am, and now I can cd to System32.
Using a different keyboard.
Using a different keyboard, indeed. So I can do that. All right, so that's pretty normal, right? Nothing to write home about, pretty understandable. But how about if I wanted to do something like, go into the registry. So now I'm looking at the registry. So now what's happening is I'm looking at the registry as if I were in a file system. So I can go off and say,
what about tab completion? You couldn't tab complete in a registry,
well,
could you?
I could too. So now I can go off and take a look at all of these things. So that gets what a provider is pretty well in focus here. So let's take a look at what it takes to build a provider. Not that much really. So let's take a look. 2 lines of code. No, I'm kidding. 530 lines of code or so. Again, there is a lab in our hands-on lab that goes through bit by bit in great detail how to build one of these commandlets, all 530 lines at one line by line. But the most important thing to take a look at is this. Again, it's an attribute that says the following thing is a provider. That's all it needs to do that. And the next thing says, what kind of provider is it? So I subclass, we have a number of different classes that you can do this from, and in my particular case, what I'm doing is I'm subclassing from a navigational commandlet, and I'm also going to implement some content methods. So this will allow me to go and navigate through this provider and then extract contents from the provider. And what this provider is, the bits and pieces that you haven't necessarily seen, it's all implemented here in the helpers, is this is actually an Access database provider. So this will allow me to take an Access database and treat it like a file system. So let's create a new drive. New drive. My database. The name of the database provider, if you noticed it was AccessDB, and then the favorite
Northwind.
Northwind database. So now this is all I've done. I've now created a drive called MyDB that is associated with the Access database provider, and I can say, show me the drives that the system has, and there you see it in the list, and okay, so what does that mean?
Now again, you want to tighten your seatbelts.
This means that I can go to the MyDB drive and get a listing of the tables in that database.
Can you tab complete?
Sure. Of course. Let's see what's a good one. Employees. So now that I'm now in the employee table of the Northwind database. That's pretty okay. Oh, these are the rows of the Northwind database. What's the row? Well, in this particular case, I'm just showing the first, I'm showing column 1. But what if I actually wanted to get all the data from column, or from row 0? So I say cat, row 0. Well, that's kind of interesting. What if I actually wanted to do some more things with this? Like say, oh, who's in Seattle with this guy? So that's cat, all the rows. And I'll just say where the city matches Seattle. And now I've got the 2 database entries. I can obviously see it's row 0 and row 7. And I can find out, or I could take this and pipe this to a table, for example. Format this as a table. Show me the first name, the last name, the home phone, and the photo. And so what I'm doing here with literally 531 lines of code, there we go. What I'm doing with this, just a little bit of code, I've got access to this Access database provider pretty straightforwardly.
We'll take questions at the end, okay?
All right, let's go.
Oh, wait, don't do that. You didn't show my favorite part.
Okay.
So, get drive. So here are all the drives, okay? Now notice, right, you have file system registry. Notice aliases. Aliases? What's that? Certificate. You have the certificate store. You got functions, variables are my favorite. CD to variables. Variable. Okay? Dir. Dir. Sort by name. I don't know, what's that mean, right? Could that be? Okay? Right, it's a drive. Dir Z. Okay? So the thing here I want to point out is, don't think about this as just, your dad's file system. This is not your dad's file system stuff, right? You can be extraordinarily creative with this, and the power is fantastic. The other thing is, it's not the Unix model, right, where there's a least common factor approach, a least common denominator approach. So when I'm in the cert directory, right, I can do my dirs and I can do recurs. There's a certain level of common functionality. Dir, starting from here, find me anything, and recurse, right, and gives me everything, blah, blah, blah. That was a bad thing to do. Anyway, fix that. Yeah. What I could have done is to, because I'm in the code signing environment, I can say in the cert drive, I can say minus code signing. and it will do a recursive directory, but only show me the code signing elements. Okay, so as I was saying, so you say minus code sign, and it's showing you just the code signing certs. If you say minus code signing in the registry, it says, what are you talking about? So depending upon where you are, you get namespace specific semantics. Okay, so you don't have to say, I'm going to limit my functionality that I deliver to my customers by the narrow template of stuff that we provide. No, no, no. You get to go to 11 with this stuff. All right, so all right, so one of the things we want to talk about now, we've shown you, hopefully got it in focus. This is a command line shell. It's a scripting environment that can be embedded. Shown you your two development choices. You're going to take and make your system applications manageable by providing commandlets or providers. And now, what do you get for that, right? What do your customers get? Can you script this? What do you personally get? And we're going to talk to the key thing here is that Monad brings the system to the user, right? How many of you have ever, growing up, right, had that conversation with one of your parents where they say, oh, you just have to understand your mom. Oh, you just have to understand your dad, or you just have to understand something. And at some point you become a teenager and you say, dang it, when is it time for somebody to understand me, right? Well, nobody? Oh, I guess I'm the only one. Well, in some sense, Windows is kind of like that, or actually systems are kind of like that, right? Well, you just have to understand your system. Well, you just have to understand SQL does it this way. Oh, well, you just have to understand ADSI. Well, we do it that way. Well, you just have to understand WMI. Well, when's it going to understand you? And the answer is now, right? That's our job. Our job is to help the system understand you, okay? And so what's that mean? So first is, the system ought to be able to interact in the style that you want to interact, right? Hey, I want to manage a server. You shouldn't have to install Visual Studio on your server to write, code, C# code to manage that, right? You shouldn't have to ask your customers to do that. Your customers want command line interfaces, okay? So we're going to provide that. Now, scripting languages, we're a little bit of a hybrid here, right? We're an interactive shell. And one of the reasons why is that traditional scripting languages do not lend themselves well for interactivity. So in this example, $A equals get process. Notice I didn't have to declare $A. I didn't have to declare it. I didn't have to type it. You'll be able to do that if you want to, but you're not required to. So it's very nice and ad hoc. $A pipe to file name, redirection of objects and text to files, critical interactive environment, not very easily done in a scripting environment. Copy item A to B. Notice you don't have to use quotes, okay? So too, we felt that there was a great opportunity to learn and to be better and more consistent. So notice here, we've got a consistent syntax while with the traditional brackets, more consistent parentheses and squiggle brackets as opposed to while and when and do and done and such like that. If we've got the consistent syntax. Notice here that the syntax is very consistent with C#. Okay, so that was one of the goals we had. Wherever possible, reduce the delta between Monad and C#. Why? Because we know that at some point you're going to need to take this and go maximal power, maximal resources, and you're going to want to implement it in systems programming. So we are not C# script. We are Monad. But wherever possible, we tried to reduce the differences between those two languages. So much, in fact, that whereas Monad's written entirely in C#, we in fact have some members of the development team who do their prototyping for the code that they're going to write. They prototype in Monad, okay, because it's just a great environment to do prototyping. And then they go and implement it in C#. So, it's really quite similar. And we want to make this production scripting, right? This is not just ad hoc scripting. This allows you to do production level scripting, things you can bet your business on. Okay. Next is we want to bring the system to you, right? You shouldn't have to go to Barnes & Noble to understand your system. We love books. We're going to write some books. We encourage you to buy them all. But in the same token, if your system's in trouble and you need fired if it doesn't come up and running in an hour. You shouldn't have to spend 40 minutes of that running to the bookstore, right? The system, you ought to be able to discover the system using the tool. And so what do we have? We've got Get Help. Get Help provides documentation about the system, documentation about the commandlets and the topics. This provides man-style help, but it's not a man page. In fact, what it generates is help objects. Help objects. And then the man-style page is a text representation, a text rendering of those help objects. But it's a help object, so you can republish all the help in your own format. Okay, you know, I know some of you have bought books like that, right? It looked just like somebody's help reformatted. Now you can do it with a program. You can all become authors, and just like that. Very easy to do. No, and so it allows you to do great manipulation of things. You can say, find me all the commands where the examples have something to do with processes. Okay, things like that. Next is get command. Now, get command you want to think of as like a Unix witch on mega steroids, right? The Arnold Schwarzenegger of which, okay? It provides you information about commandlets, existing applications, functions, filters, lots of detailed information, both interactive and programmatic information about those things. And then get member. Get member, you can take any object, pipe it to get member or pass it to get member, and we reflect against that object to tell the user what it is. So you say GPS. How do you know what things you can manipulate? He said, get processes, pipe to where handles is greater than 500. How did you know handles, right? And the answer is, ooh, I'm a systems programmer. I went to Visual Studio and I read the documentation. You know, that's not going to work. And the answer is no. What you do is you take the output of get process and you pipe it to get members, and we'll tell you what you can do to get members. Okay, uniform data access. There's lots of different type systems, XML, blah, 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 ADO, ADSI, WMI. And what we do is we provide a uniform syntax to those things. So here you have some XML, and you can say $x.a.b.c using property syntax to access those objects. So too, you can take that thing and you can pipeline it and use any of the manipulations. It looks like an object to the system. If you want to treat it as XML, you can do that. Ditto for ADI and WSI, right? ADSI and WMI. If you take a look at those things, they essentially are property bag type systems, which is to say you have one WMI object to represent 10,000 WMI objects. And when you ask it, tell me what your properties are, it says, I'm a property bag. I've got essentially one property. It's called properties. And what we do is we reflect into that and show you all the properties. And so too with AD, the columns, and we look at the column names for properties and provide a uniform syntax to access information for you. We also create synthetic types. So in the case of WMI, where you have one object to represent 10,000 other objects, our entire system, our formatting, our rendering, etc., is type-based. So you can't really do that when you have one type which represents 10,000 types. So here we generate a synthetic type. Okay, so here you see, I guess the last one is the WMI object. We take the WMI object and we append some extra WMI information to it, making it unique. We do the same thing for COM, adding the GUID, and the same thing for XML, using the XML namespace. This allows you to register views for those specific objects. We provide three different types of, there have been two different types of scripting. Text scripting, the traditional Unix model, COM scripting, the traditional Windows model, and there's a new kind emerging, .NET scripting. So the text scripting, you're all familiar with this world. How do we support it? Well, .NET is the way we support it, okay? The .NET string class is the basic class. It's got a great set of functionality. If you're a beginning programmer, this is really the only .NET class you have to learn, okay, is the .NET string class. It does index and match and all that good stuff, okay? .NET, the classes are great in the sense that many of them you can pass a string and it will instantiate an object, okay? So if you have a string that is a date time, you can just cast it to a date time. It creates a date time object for it, and then it's pre-parsed, so then you can just access the members. right? So you no longer have to take some funky string and say, how do I get the month out of that thing? The answer is you cast it to a date time and ask for the month. Very, very simple, transformative. We have, if you're familiar with text-based scripts, there's a set of data structures that are very helpful for that text-based scripting. XML, hash tables, arrays, we support all that. And we have a rich set of text operators. Match, like, match is for regular expressions, like is for globbing, right? Globbing, most people understand. Regular expressions are for you bit heads who really want to turn the crank to 11. Replace, multiply, add, all that great stuff applied to strings. The other down. We've got com scripting. You new up an object, you say minus com object and give it prog ID. You get an access to that. We give you a synthetic type, and then you can reflect against it to find all of its properties, invoke any of its methods, access its properties, and you can then pipeline it to any of our utilities and pipelines. It's fully integrated into the system. And then lastly, we have these .NET, scripting.NET. So you can create any .NET object. Here you give it the time and the arguments. You can access the methods, $d.getDateTime. You can invoke method. You can access the properties, invoke the methods. We have a special syntax for accessing the statics. Okay, brackets, it represents the type. : says, give me a static. There, now, you're accessing a static property. Is leap year is a static method. And what we do is we do a least type differencing algorithm on these things, okay? And if we ever get that wrong, you can always cast your variables to the correct type to ensure that you get the correct method, right? So very, very powerful. Again, what I want to point out here is that you're going to deliver your functionality. And the question is, what is your customer going to get? And the answer is going to get great integration, whether they're text-based scripters, com-based scripters, whatever. This tool, they're going to be able to easily adopt, take advantage of, and then take advantage of your information in it. So too, there's, where I've mentioned 3 styles of scripting, there are 3 levels of scripting. Level 1, operator. I'm just an operator. I type command lines, I enter them, and I'm done. Fully supported. Level 2, simple scripting, kind of bash style scripting. You don't type your arguments, you use $args, $args of 1, etc. Very, very simple scripting. We support it. All those folks can access your information using very simple scripting. Level 3, sophisticated scripting, right? Turn it to 11. Go for it. Want to be able to access complex data structures, rich control structures, even to the point of supporting lambdas. There's an incredibly wide dynamic range. You pick the appropriate level, you can be fully functional at that level and progress if and when you want to progress. You don't need to. That, Superstar Jim, show us.
So I'm going to quickly go through a couple of things that are really, really cool. For example, this little script that you see here is a script that allows me to get the types that are actually available to me in a process, in my current process. So first thing says, I've got a parameter, what assembly name do you want to get to it? Then the second line here says, give me a list of assemblies where get the current, from the app domain, get the current domain, get those assemblies, and then filter those assemblies based on the location of that assembly. And then for each one of those assemblies, give me the types of it. For example, if I want to say, get me the types that are part of the data, anything that I've got in my process using that matches data, those are all the types that are available to me in this particular process. So this allows me to very, very quickly figure out, well, this doesn't work, why not? Well, it's because the type isn't present in my environment. So it's very quick to do. And these things, again, what's really happening here is we're getting type information. So I can get each one of these things, or I could filter them. I think for time constraints, I'll press on. Here's a really, really interesting one. We get questions a lot that says, okay, so you can host MSH or Monad as a DLL, but what about other languages? How do I get access to other languages from this environment? Well, this is an example of that. I'm actually going to host IronPython. So I load the iron Python, that's the top line here. I load the iron Python DLL into my process, and I create a new object. I create an instance of the Python engine. That's kind of fun. Okay, so what am I going to do with this? Well, I'm going to call the execute method on that object, and I'm going to create a function called pydraw. And then I'm going to now...
So that code there in that pink
this all
code,
is code.
that's all Python code.
Yeah, this is not Monad code. This is all Python code. And I create that Python code.
So this is a Monad script launching the Python engine and defining a set of Python functions.
And then I retrieve the Python object, the pydraw variable, as a Monad variable. So using pydraw, I can call in a little spiral function. I can then call, using our syntax, calling the Python engine, and what the result is. So what's happening here is I'm using Monad to host Python to call GDI to draw spirals on the screen.
To hypnotize you all. I love Monad.
Right.
I love Monad.
So we also talked a little bit about the COM stuff. So one of the things that I wrote was a little script because I like graphics. I mean, I'm a kind of a graphics kind of guy sometimes, and I like them. So I wanted to see a chart of my processes. So I created a script called convert chart. And what this chart does is this uses a feature of the shell language called a here string. The Unix shells have here docs. You may be familiar with this. The Monad language has here strings. And so what I'm doing here is I'm creating a big hunk of HTML and VB script that just acts as a filter. And all I need to do is pass a key and the property of information that I want to get, and I can build myself a little HTML. Now, that's kind of interesting, okay, but I want to display that HTML. So I have another little script called out.ie that simply pipes the data to Internet Explorer. So let's take a look here. Let's say where the handle count is greater than 500, and now we will say convert to HTML, and we will say out.ie. That's going to return me an object, so I'm going to save that away.
Convert HTML or chart?
Convert chart, thank you very much.
We got lots of functions.
Well, that's right, because I didn't hand it something, right? I need to hand it a process name, and I need to say, what do I want to show? Well, handle count. Well, that's kind of interesting, but not very pretty.
Jim, it's not sorted.
Yeah, okay, fine. So let's sort it. All I need to do here is say sort handle count. Wham.
That's nice.
So I've used our process objects. I've handed those process objects to a script. Convert that script into text, which can be then rendered by the Internet Explorer. It's still hanging around back there. Let's take a look here. Now, that Internet Explorer is I have access to it. IE.visible. Why, yes, it is. Why, no, it's not. Why, yes, it is. Why, no, it's not. Really, it's not. So I'm calling the methods on that application, on that COM object, using the COM methods that it's presenting to me.
By the way, as developers, just think of the potential ramifications this has for testing your applications, right? Your GUI applications. Two levels. One is the degree to which you write your GUIs layered on top of this. You test the abstract layer using automation, and then the GUI is just a simple interface on top of it, so there's much less to test. Two is the degree to which you have access to script the GUI. You have just fantastic testability of your application.
Now, we talked earlier about how to, the old style, text style, how do you deal with that? Well, you can use text-based tools, or you can convert that data into an object. And that's what this script does. This script uses the netstat command and converts it through this code here. All of this, by the way, is available in the hands-on lab, so I'm not going to go through in too much detail. But this will actually convert get netstat. That gives me, what you're seeing here is an object. So let's take that object. Now show me the packets received. Packets received. So that little shell script allows me to take an existing text-based utility and incorporate that existing text-based utility completely in this environment. So in this particular example, if I had lots and lots of text objects that I convert to real objects, I could then use the filtering mechanisms or the sorting and all of those things in the same way that we use with our regular commandlets. You can convert text-based applications into this environment and use them and participate fully in this environment like everything else does. Each time the script is run, netstat is called. The question was, that's not dynamically calling, getting the data. No, the answer is no. Each time the script is run, the data comes, the netstat is run, and that data is then converted.
All right, so call to action. Again, the model here is you write .NET interfaces to your management functions. Then you write a thin layer of commandlets or providers to expose those, focusing in on the experience of that data. Point to drive home. .NET objects are not admin experiences. Okay, you want to have a great admin experience. And then write and share scripts. Now, we've got a number of community resources. Here at the PDC, there are a number of other management talks. The key thing is we've got hands-on labs. I really encourage you to, and we'll participate in the tracks. Monad has quite a great presence here at the show, and I encourage you to take advantage of it, okay? I'm the architect for Monad. Jim is the language guy. Bruce Payette, the language development lead. We got superstar Jeff Jones here, who did a bunch of work on the namespace providers. We got Adam Barr here. You might know Adam Barr. He's got the great blog, proudly serving our corporate masters. He's a PM on the team. So, and Lee Holmes, who's done a developer on the security work. So we've got a great presence here. Come, ask your questions. We'll be at the Experts Lounge. We're in the Languages and Tools track. And here's a number of great resources to get. Two things I want to kind of highlight. They're not on this, but Thomas Lee, Superstar Thomas, has a blog called Under the Stairs, and a resource kit and a website, resourcekit.net, reskit.net/monad, where there's a bunch of great sample scripts. You should go there. And then also Tom's Hardware. Tom's Hardware has been a great source of information about Monad. And a number of weeks ago, there was a bunch of blah, blah, blah about Monad virus, et cetera. And I just want to highlight that Tom's Hardware was one of the few publications that kind of stuck there, found the right perspective on that, and did a great job on giving a straight scoop on that. So with that, oh, yay. Okay. Give it up for Tom.
Yes.
So now we've got about 15 minutes, or maybe a little less, but we'd like you to use the microphone and ask away.
Please.
Howdy. I mainly do desktop management, and I'm really interested in, would this really help? Which clients, desktop clients, can you load this on, current ones?
Okay, so the question is, which desktop clients can you load Monad on currently? As of yesterday, there's now a fully public beta, Beta 2. Prior to that, it was only available in Beta Place. Now you can go to Microsoft Downloads, pick up our Beta 2, lots of great functionality, and that runs on XP, 2003, and Windows Vista.
So not 2000?
But not 2000.
Okay. And also, are you working with the deployment teams?
Are we working with the deployment teams? Can you say more?
The Vista deployment team, so like scripted deployment, sysprep, all that kind of stuff?
Okay, so currently the answer is no. This Monad runs on Vista, but there are no Vista dependencies on Monad.
Yeah, what options are there for hosting Monad?
What options are there for hosting Monad? Monad is it's an interactive shell, and it's a DLL. So we've got a set of hosting APIs that you can go write your own host. So whenever there's something like write console or write verbose or write object, there's a set of console hosting APIs that you can implement.
So are they .NET hosting APIs or COM?
They're .NET hosting APIs.
All right, as I understand, the decision was made not to ship this with Vista, right? That it's going to come after Vista or final. Is that correct?
Well,
currently, it is not in the plan to ship this with Vista.
Right.
That's the right thing to say.
correct. We are,
Watch that space.
Okay. So then the question is there's the basic capabilities that you just described, but then there's specific providers and commandlets.
Yes.
So it will take commandlets and providers for managing the basic capabilities of Vista or the older operating systems, and how will those things be delivered? Like, at some point in time, will I be able to reproduce all the things I could do with like the net commands, you know, in Monad without having to write my own providers, obviously, and things like that? Could you just describe how
Sure.
those will come? And then I guess exchanges
it's
come in the same way.
It's actually a great thing to set expectations here, and that is, you know, we're going to be digging ourselves out of a 25-year hole, right? We have not done the support for the command line as we should have. And so it's going to take us a while. We're not going to get that problem solved in version 1. And we think in version 1 we're going to have pretty good support, but not full support. So for instance, by supporting WMI, that gives you access to a bunch of things. Okay, but indeed, the real payoff comes when each one of the feature teams takes this and develops specific commandlets to their thing, to their feature. That is going to take a number of years to support.
So that'll be the features team's job to write those commandlets.
Exactly.
And at some point in time, we'll get to this point where all the things are scriptable and accessible that today, like for AD or
that's right. I mean, the real expertise for those features reside in the feature teams, right? We want to be sure that they have the opportunity to do exactly what they need for their.
So the model's similar to like management packs for MOM. You know, the teams write those things, and you guys are like writing the MOM engine.
Exactly.
Equivalent
Yeah.
to that. Okay.
And the other thing is that we will rely upon the community. I mean, if you see, because of the access to .NET, because of the access to COM, et cetera, it allows the community to go and write some of these abstractions and share them. Where, you know, people who are more technically advanced will produce abstractions for people who aren't as technically advanced. And that's really how the scripting world has progressed over the last 30 years. Okay. So we think that relying on you guys to help.
Okay, and then last is that the Exchange 12 guys are saying they're going to be the first ones to actually be building on top of this thing, basically. So
yes, Monad will be available. Monad technology will be available in Exchange. Next releases of Exchange, MOM, and the WinFX SDK.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for waiting. Sorry.
Yes, if you have a user who's navigating through the hierarchy provided by your provider, is there a standard way, and I think you said get command, but I wasn't sure if get command was it, that the user could find out the commands available that you provided at that particular level of the hierarchy?
Oh, the answer is not in version 1. So we have a standard set of commands, and there's a way to get at that. It's basically about help about provider commandlets or help common commandlets, and that'll tell you all the ones that we support. You have the ability to provide additional ones, and in version 1, there's no, it's done through help.
Thank you for your question.
You spoke about hosting Monad in a number of environments, including MMC snap-ins and so on. But as beautiful as that command line environment is, I can't help thinking you're missing a Monad Explorer for graphical visualization, which would be pretty darn easy.
I agree.
Your objects would be visualizable. If, for example, if they're pictures, they should be thumbnails and so on.
I agree 100%. Here's the deal. Churchill once said, to govern is to choose. Okay? At Microsoft, to ship is to choose. If you want to ship at Microsoft, you choose which things you're going to cut. And but watch that space. I agree with you 100%. The potential here. I mean, that's the thing. Hopefully I've drawn a picture whereby a small amount of code on your part is going to deliver incredible value to your customers and to you. Okay? But the other thing I didn't spend as much time on is that's just the beginning. We are going to add things like Explore. We are going to add things like, well, I shouldn't get too much into details. I can tell you that there's a ton of great ideas that we're going to be adding to this. And some of those, you'll have to do a little extra work. A bunch of those you won't. You're going to invest and you're going to get all that for free, right? The rising tide of functionality. That's the whole point of the architecture, right? The whole point of the architecture is leverage. You do a little bit of work in a context where we do a bunch more work and you get all the benefit for it.
Thank you for the question.
Yes, hi, Jeffrey. Scott Fulton with the aforementioned Tom's Hardware Guide, and thank you
Oh,
for
yay.
the very kind mention you made earlier. I wanted to let you know, and for the benefit of the rest of the audience, my sources continue to tell me that no official decision has been made whether to ship or govern, as you say, Monad in conjunction with Longhorn Server. I've been told it's never really been considered part of the Vista client series. It's never really part of what's been shipped with the Vista operating system. And then but as for whether it ships as an administrator tool, no decision has been made whether it is released with the final product or simply made available for download generally. And I wanted to make sure that that jives with your understanding.
Well, I'm going to disappoint you a little bit here.
Okay.
My goal is to not create any news on that topic here. So I'm just going to say what is the things that is clear is that we are shipping with Exchange, we are shipping with MOM, and we are shipping with the WinFX SDK, and then watch that space. So I'm sorry I can't give you more.
Well, based on what we've seen here, what you're doing, I believe, sincerely, is helping to change what it means to be a Windows Enterprise Administrator. Now,
I agree.
there has been a kind of a dirty secret for long years among the best administrators that what it means to be certified as an administrator and what it means to actually be adept at your task have been two different things, because command line tools inevitably become invoked more and more and more by the best in the business. Now, what you're doing is, I believe, helping to underscore and validate, give legitimacy to the people who have been using command line tools, WMI in one form or another in the past. So I'm wondering whether the folks you work with at Microsoft have given any consideration that they've told you about with regard to whether by changing what it means to be an administrator, it changes the qualifications for certification. In other words, going into the future, could we conceivably see a Monad certification, or at least Monad fluency or capability added to the features list of what an admin needs to get a certification?
That's a great idea. We haven't really thought about that. I agree with a bunch of your points about, a bunch of your points. But no, we haven't really thought that through.
Okay.
But we will now.
Long question, short answer.
Thanks.
Hi.
Oh, we're going to get kicked off the stage. Yep. So we're going to be at the Track Lounge.
Right
Come
now,
on.
we're going to the track lounge. All right, thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.